ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. So there are 9 varshas as we have been seeing in previous sessions. कुरु वर्ष, रम्यक वर्ष, हिरण्यक वर्ष, भद्राश्व वर्ष, केतुमाल वर्ष, हरि वर्ष, किम पुरुष वर्ष, इलावृत वर्ष, and Bharata Varsha. And it is nice to note that in all the 8 varshas, sense gratification facilities are to the highest. Only in Bharata Varsha restrictions are there to a great extent. So one thing which Prabhupada writes here is, varshas are there obviously, but Prabhupada brings in the concept of the yugas. So there are different yugas: Satyuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and Kali Yuga. And Prabhupada is saying, during the first Yuga, Satyuga, people were very pious. Everyone practiced the mystic yoga system for spiritual understanding and realization of God. Because everyone was always absorbed in samadhi, no one was interested in material sense enjoyment. During Treta Yuga, people enjoyed sense pleasure without tribulations. Material miseries began in Dwapar Yuga, but they were not very stringent. Stringent material miseries really began from the advent of Kali Yuga. See, one thing that we can easily understand is, as the yugas have degraded from Satyuga, the golden age, to Kali Yuga, the iron age, people have also become less dharmic as they come down. And also people have become more and more sinful. Now just think about this one point. When people are engaged all the time in austerities, yagyas, and doing various different activities according to Shastra, naturally the sense gratification tendency will go down. It's very natural. And that's how people were in Satyuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga. They were very dharmic in their behavior because they would follow Shastra as it is, the Vedic scriptures as it is. And therefore the tendency of sense gratification goes on reducing. This is one point which we sadhakas can also note, that more we adhere to what is given in Shastra and live our life accordingly, this natural sense gratification tendency, as of now that is ingrained, that will go on reducing. As of now, why sense gratification tendencies are increasing? Because people are not following dharma. People are not following Shastra. So all these personalities, they would follow. They would follow it very nicely. And therefore, the sense gratification tendency was less. Now, it's a very ironical thing in this world that if your sense gratification tendencies are less, you will get more facilities for sense gratification. This is very nice to understand. So more your sense gratification reduces, tendency reduces, the facilities are increased. This is material world. So in Satyuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, they had huge lifespan. Like in Satyuga, 1 lakh years. And then Treta Yuga, 10,000 years. Dwapar Yuga, 1,000 years. This was the lifespan which people had. And their heights were huge. Satyuga, then it reduced little bit in Treta Yuga, then it reduced little bit in Dwapar Yuga. Now it's 5 foot, 6 foot. That's the height. And that will go on reducing, it seems, according to the 12th canto Srimad Bhagavatam. And the bodies were also very strong. They were able to do austerities for 60,000 years, Satyuga. Now to sit in a Bhagavatam class for 60 minutes, we are so troubled with back, this and that, you see. So there's a difference that you see in the bodies, the strength and everything in the previous yugas and the current one. There's a huge degradation that has taken place. But the most funny thing is, even after having all that, their sense gratification was very less. And now, when we hardly have any strength in the body, when the bodies are so khatara, and the facilities around are so degraded, still people want to do so much of sense gratification. This is the very, very important understanding that we need to have, that more the sense gratification tendency goes down, the facilities will be given more and more and more to do more sense gratification. But those people will not indulge into sense gratification. Same thing. Now, when people are doing the Vedic times, obviously now it's not the case. In the Vedic times, when people wanted to enjoy, they were doing austerities here on this planet. And they would like to go to one of the Swargas. Mostly the Divya Swarga, that is the higher heavenly planets. If not, then some heavenly planet in other 8 Varshas. Or something like that. Now, just contemplate on this subject matter. So I want to enjoy thoroughly. For that, what I'm doing? For that, I'm doing austerities. I'm doing various yagyas. I'm chanting the holy names of the Lord. But my goal is I want to go to heaven and I want to enjoy. Now, when a person is doing so much of austerity, so much of tapasya in terms of following Shastra, doing so many pious activities, tell me, won't the sense gratification, enjoyment tendency go down? Naturally, it goes down when the person is doing so much of tapasya. And then when he goes to a heavenly planet, obviously he has sense gratification tendency, but it will not be as much as what he had on this planet. It's very funny to understand that only those people who become very dharmic in their lifestyle, in their thought process, and those people whose sense gratification thought process goes down, they are the ones who end up in heavenly planet. And the pleasure that is there in the heavenly planet is also at a very high level. It is described that there is no birth, there is no death, there is no old age, there is no disease. So it's like the person disappears, dies here and appears there. So there is no birth, there is no pain of birth. And then he enjoys throughout. So the youth span is more in the heavenly planet. The youth span is more. The bodily strength is there. Now there is no old age. Now suppose they have to leave that place, they'll just disappear from that place and appear in someone's womb here in this material world. I mean, on this planet. So again, this point comes into picture that all these people who are dharmic in their thought process, first. Second, the sense gratification tendencies will be less. Those people are given more facilities for sense gratification. And those people who have a lot of sense gratification tendencies, for them, the facility of a sense gratification is less or degraded. So this goes on to say that sense gratification is not encouraged. As simple as that. It's not that the creator does not have brain. No, some people say materialists, if they hear this class, they might think, maybe the creator is foolish. ऐसे क्यों कर रहे हैं? The ones who have sense gratification tendency, they should be given more sense gratification facilities. And the ones who have less, for them it should be less. But it's not like that. The creator is very intelligent. Very intelligent. What the creator wants, there's a goal behind everything that is created in this world. It's not something randomly created. There's a goal. And what is that goal? The goal is not to encourage sense gratification. This is the goal. And therefore we see that wherever there is sense gratification, naturally regulation comes into picture. And in this world also, all of us can observe that those people who are pious, even on this planet, around us, even those people who are pious, you can observe that sense gratification tendencies will be comparatively less as compared to sinful people. You can easily make out. You can see that how these pious people will remain in sattva guna, and naturally that dharmic tendency will be there, the dharmic mentality will be there. But those who are sinful, their sense gratification tendencies will be high. And what sort of sense gratification tendency? Adharmic sense gratification tendencies. You can easily make out the difference between the pious ones and the sinful ones. And what sort of sense gratification? Or what sense gratification? The highest sense gratification is sex. And that is described here in this particular purport. That's the highest sense gratification. And we will see the aggression in this activity of sex also goes on reducing as the person becomes pious and dharmic, and the person goes higher and higher in his consciousness, and even the higher planetary systems for that matter. The aggression of sex is the highest when it comes to the lower species of life, like animals. I was hearing that in one Bhagavatam class, that there are some insects, it seems. So when they mate, the highest pleasure that the insect gets, look at the degraded form of pleasure. The highest pleasure that the insect gets while mating is when the female insect, when she bites the head of the male insect and kills the male insect. That's the highest pleasure. Just think about that. What is the pleasure? Now, a human being will think, the female is killing the male. And that's the pleasure. In fact, the male also feels the pleasure, it seems, at that time. Now, for us, it's very difficult for us to comprehend. But that's the pleasure that they have. And and various other species, for them, the aggression of sex will be higher. Now, human beings, that will be there. Aggression of sex, passionate sex. At one place, Prabhupada writes that females like to be raped. There's so much of discussion on that. And so many people not understanding the mode of Srila Prabhupada, they say, what sort of Acharya he is? Why he has written like this? So it's not about the rape in actual sense. It's about the passionate sex that is spoken there. Because naturally, any spouse would want, especially females, are very possessive about their husbands. And how do you understand that my husband loves me? Through the way they engage, in the sensual activity. So the husband is not passionate in sex. It means koi aur mil gayi hai usko. That's the mood, that has been there. So the passionate sex determines the attachment and the attraction and the love or the infatuation that the person has. So now that passion is needed. On this planet, for human beings I'm talking about, that passion is needed, that aggression is needed. Now that determines the enjoyment, that determines the pleasure. But as it goes higher and higher, as the person goes higher and higher in consciousness to the higher planetary systems, now this sex will not be as gross and as aggressive and as passionate as what we see on this planet. It is described that the Gandharvas, they have sex by singing. As you go higher and higher to Brahmaloka, the sex is on intellectual platform. Because the bodies are made up of intelligence. It's not made up of the gross earth, water, fire, air, ether, the way we have it here. So when Brahma, when he got the thought of sex, so everyone around condemned him. And what did he do? He just gave up the body. And that was considered to be suicide. But what did he give up? He just gave up a thought. That's it. He didn't kill his body. He just gave up that thought, and that was considered to be the suicide. So you see, as the person goes higher and higher and higher in higher planetary systems, the bodies are made very subtle. And when the bodies are subtle, then even the sex enjoyment also goes subtler and subtler and subtler. But the enjoyment is there, no doubt. Enjoyment is there. They also enjoy to the fullest. But now, that same thing that is done on this planet, which is aggressive or which is passionate, is no more passionate and aggressive in the higher planetary systems. That is the point. Now, very important thing to note that sex is the topmost pleasure that is there in this material world. And one thing that we have to take it for granted, any sense gratification will be followed by misery. Any sense gratification. So all of us, we have the experience of what? The feast prasadam. So all of us, we have this experience. Nicely we'll enjoy, and later the devotee suffers. So wherever there is sense gratification, there will be suffering. This has to be very clear. Even when some respect is offered to us and we enjoy that respect, take it for granted, misery will be there. Misery will follow. Maybe it will follow in terms of the karma transfer from the subordinate to the superior, and the superior has to suffer the sins of the subordinate, or it can be in some other way. Or the same person who is glorifying us, who is putting us on the seventh cloud, the same person will pull us down and beat us nicely after some time. So in this world, any form of sense gratification will be followed by misery. No doubt about that. A very beautiful shloka from Bhagavad-gita. Yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yonyava evate adhyavanta kaunteya nateshu ramate buddha. So here Krishna is saying that yehi samsparshaja bhoga. Any sort of sense gratification that we do, that will be followed by dukkha, misery. Therefore, that person who is intelligent, nateshu ramate. He does not take pleasure in sense gratification. Now, when it comes to sex pleasure, which is the highest pleasure in this world, and as Prabhupada says, the entire world is revolving around sex. This one word. In this pleasure, obviously there should be misery, no doubt. So as soon as there is sense gratification, misery has to come. And what is that we see in this world? So talking about the illicit sex, the legal sex. So the misery that follows is the pregnancy. And that is what is given in this purport also. Pregnancy. Now, when a female becomes pregnant, now it's very, very much difficult for a female. She undergoes a lot of misery even during the state of pregnancy. Firstly, the body structure changes. So many hormonal imbalance will start. And so much, the vomiting and this and that, so much of misery. It is described the normal delivery that used to take place, the labor pain, that is equivalent to the pain of death. That is the pain that the female used to go through. Obviously now there is operation and this and that, but I'm talking about the normal labor pain. So they used to go through that huge pain, equivalent to death. So this is misery, which the female goes through. Very, very miserable state. And even after the baby is delivered, there's so many changes in the bodily structure. And there are times when, due to that labor pain, many females give up their body also, death. So many times it has happened. So many times. Yes. So in this way we see there is one misery for the female. Now the male has also enjoyed. So he also has to have some misery. And what is that misery? As soon as a child is born, then the male starts planning. Now he has to be taken care. No? The child has to be taken care. The responsibility comes. Now he starts planning. Abhi isko school bhejna hai, abhi this and that. And what if he becomes a rowdy in future? What will happen? And see, the parents who have given birth to the child and say the child is not proper, they have to undergo a lot of misery. So here we see that there is a misery on the gross platform for a female, and also on the subtle platform, the tension will be there to upbring the upbringing of the child. And also at the same time, when it comes to the male, he has more of a subtle misery and gross misery also, because he has to work more hard now. No doubt. Even now I have seen when people, they plan to beget children, and there's a talk that is going on about begetting children. They're very tensed. Oh, so much of responsibility will come. And now when the female gets pregnant, the male starts planning. Okay, I have to have this much saving, I have to do this, I have to do that. Therefore, one thing is very clear in this world. Sense gratification has to be followed by misery. And therefore now people think they have become very intelligent. The current generation, they think they're very intelligent. Now for them, they are like, okay, so this sense gratification if I do, misery is in the form of what? Pregnancy. Misery is in the form of responsibility. Okay, I'll not marry. I'll go and enjoy. I'll have that co-live relationship and I'll go on enjoying. But one thing is very clear. If we think we are smart, the creator is the smartest. So now talking about the illicit sex, just think about this. That there might be no pregnancy or there might be no responsibilities, but there are many miseries that come. Can you all tell what miseries are awaiting them? Okay, first is the consciousness is degraded like anything. And in such degraded consciousness, to come to the platform of practicing bhakti and to break the cycle of birth and death, attain Krishna Prem, that nowhere that thought will enter. Not possible. Not possible at all. Yes. So consciousness is very degraded. What is that? Yes, STD, sexually transmitted diseases. So many diseases will come on the gross platform. And also on the subtle platform, there are cases of depression also because of these different ways of lifestyle, different ways of avoiding pregnancy and avoiding the responsibilities. Anything else? Loyalty issues. Yes, loyalty issues. So now there's so much of doubt. Say those people who are having this illicit sex, someday they'll get married in future because of pressure from the family. Now, husband and wife, they keep doubting each other in so many ways. They keep doubting each other. Now, when your life is just centered around doubting, how can you live a happy, blissful life? Very difficult. Very difficult. Yes. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada says, illicit or illicit sex is a misery, no doubt. And the worst part about illicit sex is, once they leave the body, then the actual misery begins. There are people waiting with a beautiful arti plate in their hand to welcome them. To which place? Naraka, hell. They think, oh, I've escaped all the responsibilities, I've escaped all miseries, I've enjoyed to the fullest. Beta, aisa nahi hai. The entire laws of this material world will not allow us to do this for sure. It is not possible. Not possible at all. The person has to suffer like anything. Now, on this planet, he might be suffering due to various diseases on the gross and subtle platform. And at the same time, when he leaves the body, he has to suffer like anything in hell for many, many thousands of years. Especially those people who get into illicit sex, premarital affair or extramarital affair, they are taken to a specific hell. And in that hell, there are many different punishments which are given. One of the punishment is, there's a very, very beautiful doll that is made. For a male, a female doll is made. And for a female, a male doll is made. Talking about a male having a female doll in front. That female doll is very beautiful. Very beautiful. But the only problem with that female doll is, it's very attractive, but as people say, that girl is very hot. Yeah, that is actually very valid here. This girl is actually very hot. And how? Firstly, that doll is made up of metal, and now the temperature of that metal is like that of the molten metal. Very, very hot. And now, those people who had illicit sex in this world, they are asked, go and embrace that female, have sex with that female. And now this person knows very well that it's very, very hot. He does not want to go. So now there are agents who are around to help him to have sex. There are other people around, Yamadutas, they force him to go and embrace the female doll that is there. He's forced and he suffers like anything, because when he embraces, he feels a lot of pain, a lot of misery, because he can feel that high temperature and his body gets burnt. But the best part is, he cannot die. He does not die. And the body keeps burning and burning and burning for a long time, for many, many years. Many, many years. So those people who think by not marrying and doing all sorts of nonsense, I can enjoy and no misery, that just goes on to say you are just in ignorance and nothing else. And now there are some people who are extra smart. Yes. So they are like, okay, we will marry, but we'll try to avoid kids. So what we will do, we'll have various different contraception methods. So we'll do that, we'll use that. And by the arrangement of the material nature, sometimes even after trying to avoid as much as possible for the pregnancy, still the female becomes pregnant. And now these extra smart, extra intelligent people, they both are talking to each other, okay, even after doing so much, we tried avoiding the pregnancy, but you become pregnant, what should we do now? And the solution that is given in this world is, abort the child. And very nicely, they go to the hospital and very nicely abort the child. And they think, now we are free from responsibility. But one thing that has to be clear from Shastra is that those females and those males who are involved in this abortion of a child gets the sin equivalent to that of murdering a human being. And when they leave the body, they have to suffer like anything. In fact, even on this planet, I was hearing in some place and also reading Garuda Puran, even on this planet, when someone does this repeated abortions and all that, after some time, the female will not be able to beget child. And the male will also lose the potency. That's the punishment on this planet. And then when they leave the body, they have to go to hell. And in the hell, the level of suffering is very, very high. Because they are going to suffer equivalent amount of suffering that the person gets when he murders a human being. So think about it, suffering. Therefore, we think that I can do sense gratification using my smartness, but the material world is made very, very smart. And this smart material world, or the smart Prakriti, she knows what punishment to give to whom. Therefore, the bottom line is, sense gratification will be followed by misery. So there is no, there's no leniency for this. Sense gratification surely will be followed by misery. Now, one nice thing, that is very logical thing that Srila Prabhupada mentions in this purport is, more the sinful body, more the frequency of pregnancy. Pregnancy takes place only in lower grade life. For example, animals like dogs and hogs become pregnant twice a year, and each time they beget at least half a dozen offspring. Even lower species of life such as snakes give birth to hundreds of young ones at one time. So, have you all heard that when these snakes, when they give birth to so many offsprings, they eat also some of them, it seems. And there are many animals who do that. Now imagine what sort of sinful tendency is there in their system. How degraded that life form is. That the living entity is eating its own offspring. Just think about it. Obviously now human beings are trying to compete with such animals. Now they want to eat their own fetus. There are many examples like that coming from foreign countries. India also, it will start very soon because we like to copy what others do. So the point is, as the body becomes more and more sinful, so we understand it very clearly through Shastra, that the animal forms which are there, those are sinful bodies. So as the bodies go more and more sinful, the frequency of pregnancy goes on increasing. Now, with whatever talk I gave till now, please tell me, or try to speculate, shastrically, that when the bodies are becoming more sinful, why the frequency of pregnancy has to increase? Okay, pregnancy gives misery, suffering. Okay. Anything else you can think of? Okay, so as the body becomes more sinful, the tendency for sex goes on increasing. So? Okay, so that's what it means. That's what it means. The tendency to sin increases means Rajagun, Tamagun is taking over. But why the frequency of pregnancy has to increase? Okay, it's a punishment. Or you can also go on to say that Prakriti is putting some regulation on these sinful forms. Now, in animal forms, you will not see that if the animal is pregnant, then at that point, they'll not have sex. They'll not be having sex. That's the natural programming that is done for these animals. So now, twice a year, these dogs and hogs are getting pregnant. And then after that, the kids are there. They have to take care of their offsprings. So naturally, see, there is a restriction that is put even on animals to have sex. So this is the way the material nature has put restriction in various ways. Very intelligent, very intelligent. Well, even animals who have the higher tendency to have sex, even they cannot have it very, very frequently. There is a restriction that is put in the form of pregnancy. So, as the bodies become more and more pious, I mean, the bodies in the higher planetary system, the frequency of sex goes down because the tendency of sense gratification is less. So again, we come back to the same point that wherever there is need of regulation of sense gratification tendency, immediately, you'll see that there are restrictions which are put. In human form, also, you see, I'm talking again about pious people. So when the female becomes pregnant, naturally there is stop, to having sensual pleasure. Naturally. So it's a very important thing to note that initially when the male and female are married, the sexual attraction between the two is very high. And therefore, in the Vedic times, people were married in a very early age, so that in their youthful time itself, they lose the tendency to have sex. So say the person at the age of 20 or 22 gets married, and then he begets a child, say by the age of 24 or 25. So it is described that naturally even the sex attraction goes down. Why the sex attraction goes down? Because the focus now is shifted from the spouse to the kid. Now they have to take care of the kid. Now the kid has to grow. Now they have to think a lot about the kid. And see, in the Vedic times, if they have X number of kids, it means they had sex X number of times. So 10 kids they have or 18 kids they have. So it means they had sex so many times. Now in a lifetime of 50 years or whatever, so 10 times sex, I think that's the most regulated one, you see. Very nicely our entire Vedic system is made that, okay, you get married at certain age after the training in Gurukul, and after that you have to beget kid. You cannot escape from begetting kid. And they are educated very nicely that if you escape from begetting kid, these are the punishments that you have to go through. And then after that, when they beget kid, then yes, the responsibilities are there. And therefore it is described that if the boy has to be made responsible, just get him married. That was the funda that people had in the past. Because they knew very well that obviously he'll get into sensual pleasure, he'll beget child, responsibilities will increase, he'll become more responsible. In this way, we see that how in this material world, there are regulations these are natural, these are not external regulations. These are natural regulations which come in due course of time. And therefore in Shastra it is very clear for those people who want to follow Shastra very nicely, who want to attain the higher destination. Very clearly it is spoken in the Shastra that one should have sex only to beget kids. One cannot have sex just like that for their own pleasure. No, it's not allowed according to Shastra. Even that is considered as illicit for those people who want to attain Krishna this very lifetime. Now for modern age, it's very difficult to digest the fact. Yes. What's your problem? I'm having sex with my wife. What's your problem? No, it's not our problem, it's Shastric. But again, this is not valid for people in general who are sinful. This is valid for people who have decided that I want to live a life of Krishna consciousness and I want to attain Krishna this very lifetime. For them, this regulation is valid, not for anyone and everyone. Therefore, even when we are preaching, so we have to see whom are we preaching to, and then accordingly speak the needful. Not that we speak the highest rule, for the lower people. They'll get completely taken aback. They'll never take up to Krishna consciousness. Maybe they're not ready in this life to go back home back to Godhead. So that's okay. So this regulation that the sex should be had only to beget child, that is for people whose consciousness is developed to a very, very high level. And they are the ones who are going to make it to spiritual world. And therefore Prabhupada called those people as Grihastha Brahmacharis. So they were equivalent to Brahmacharis. And Prabhupada made statements also. My Grihastha disciples and my Sannyasi disciples are same. Because that was the standard that they were following at that time. Full day engaged in Krishna consciousness. You can imagine, I don't know how it was working at that time. All the males will stay separate, females will stay separate. And only for Garbhadan Samskar they'll come together and again they're separate. And the entire day, the males and females are just involved in one activity, and that's called Sankirtan. Morning Mangalarti, Sankirtan begins, till evening reading Krishna book, Sankirtan continues and they sleep. Can you imagine the level of consciousness that these people will have? And therefore, these people are the ones who are going to make it to the spiritual world. The sum and substance of everything that we have been discussing today is somehow this activity of sex has to be stopped or regulated. That's the funda of Shastra. That's the funda. Therefore, the ones who understand all this, read all this, and the ones whose nature supports, they say, why to enter into all this then? They are the ones who chose the ashram called Brahmachari ashram. They take a bold step saying no sex. One is regulated sex, where a person gets married and they decide, male and female, they decide, okay, we both will have sex, only to beget child. But then there are people who are more intelligent and they say that, what's the point? If I cannot do proper sense gratification, what's the point? Better I don't get into such a thing. And they take a call that, okay, we'll maintain brahmacharya. And it is seen that when the person decides that, I want to remain a brahmachari, and they practice bhakti very nicely, it is possible for them to maintain brahmacharya throughout their life. But one thing that we need to understand is the tendency of sense gratification is there. Maybe I can take a call that I want to remain a brahmachari throughout life, but this tendency, if I don't address this tendency, then naturally I will also get into illicit sex. For a brahmachari to lose semen, especially through various artificial means, that is considered to be illicit sex. Very, very important to note. So now I might have tendency and I have not addressed that tendency, but I have taken a decision to remain a brahmachari. It's not going to work. There are cases where brahmacharis have also got into illicit sexual connection with females in the congregation. There are cases. Forget about brahmacharis, even grihasthas for that matter, they have got into extramarital affair in the circle of devotees. Why? Because the tendency of sense gratification is not addressed. We might say that, yes, I want to become a devotee. I want to attain Krishna this very lifetime. So I will very nicely, very strictly follow the principles. Okay, I have decided. But what am I doing to address the tendency that I have? The tendency of sense gratification has to be removed from the root. And that is possible only through devotional service. So now say devotees might have taken a vow to remain a brahmachari throughout life. That's called Dhrida Vrata. There's something called as brahmachari for 1 day, brahmachari for 3 days, brahmachari for 1 year, and brahmachari for entire lifetime. So 1 day, 3 day, and 1 week, and 1 year, all these things are okay, still manageable. Lifetime, it's a big thing. Therefore, when we also take interview of the devotees who want to join brahmachari ashram, so these are the questions which are asked. Will you be able to remain brahmachari throughout life? And who can actually remain a brahmachari throughout life? Only those who are working on their consciousness, to raise their consciousness to the higher level by practicing intense devotional service. Full day, 24/7, only bhakti and nothing else. They are the ones who can maintain brahmacharya. Even those grihasthas who are planning to attain Krishna this very life and have decided to have sex only to beget kid, for them also, this is very, very important to address that sinful sense gratificated tendency, and that we can address only through intense devotional service, 24/7 Krishna consciousness. So now we have to ask this question: are we really addressing the tendency of sense gratification within? And that too, 24/7, not just mechanical devotional service, it has to be quality devotional service. It has to be quality. So everything that we are doing in the entire day should be quality. The quality of that particular activity of anga of bhakti that we are doing has to increase. It's very easy to say, even I am struggling to increase the quality of the various activities that we're doing. But still, the endeavor should be there to increase the quality. And I have been speaking about this in many lectures. Right from Mangalarti, our quality, we should keep analyzing. The quality check has to take place every day. And we have to see if the quality is increasing or not. And when I say quality, I'm talking about absorption. Yes. So more we are absorbed in Krishna conscious activities, less will be absorbed in sense gratification and especially thoughts of sex. More we are absorbed in rendering devotional service to the Lord. Like for example, I'm chanting Hare Krishna and I'm absorbed in hearing the holy names. I'm doing Shringar of the deities and I'm absorbed in doing that. I'm having prasad, I'm absorbed in having prasad, by understanding the glories of prasad. Or when I'm sitting in Bhagavatam class and I'm absorbed in hearing and contemplating and deciding on what to implement in my day-to-day life. Naturally, because of this absorption, we will see the absorption in sexual thoughts, absorption in various sense gratificatory thoughts will go on reducing with time. And if this is not happening, it means we are not doing bhakti with absorption, as simple as that. So when the bhakti is done properly, when Kevala bhakti is done properly with absorption, we will see the sinful tendencies which are there in our heart, all the tendencies will go down. It will go down. So it means I am addressing the tendency of sense gratification within. The question comes that itna zyada kyun? Matlab, itna natak, pehle to sense gratification tendency we have. And then we are asked to reduce. And if people are not reducing, for them there are so many restrictions which are put. Tell me why there is a need to stop sense gratification. What's the need?
Like if you only remember Krishna, then only you can.
Okay, if you remember Krishna, we can go back home. So this is the equation. So sense gratification tendency goes down. Sense gratificatory activities go down. Remembrance of Krishna increases. Remembrance of Krishna increases. I become eligible to enter the spiritual realm. As simple as that. Therefore, in third canto, there's a chapter called Description of the Kingdom of God, chapters 15. In that, there are very wonderful descriptions given. It says, Vasanti yatra purushaha sarve vaikuntha murtayah ye nimitta nimittena dharme naradhayan harim. In the Vaikuntha planets, all residents are similar in form to Supreme Personality of Godhead. They all engage in devotional service to the Lord without desires for sense gratification. So here is a qualification. If I have to enter spiritual world, then desire for sense gratification has to become zero. Now, as we discussed, so as your sense gratification tendency goes down, the facility for sense gratification goes higher. Now, in this world, when people want to eat a lot of things here and there, they have to work very hard, isn't it? Say you want to eat hot samosa with red and green chutney. How many hours you're supposed to invest to make it? Just think about it. But in spiritual world, just stand under a kalpavriksha and Prabhupada says, just think about samosa and samosas will be there on the tree. You just pluck it and eat. Yes. Prabhupada says samosas and kachoris. It will be available, just take, eat. But the best thing about the spiritual world is sense gratification tendency is zero. They just think about how to render devotional service better. It is described here very beautifully. In Vaikuntha planets, the inhabitants fly in their airplanes, accompanied by their wives and consorts, eternally singing of the character and activities of the Lord, which are always devoid of all inauspicious qualities. It is described that all these devotees in the spiritual world, they look extremely beautiful. The females are extremely beautiful. The male are extremely beautiful. And it is given, especially the description says, although crowded by their concerts and description of concerts who have large hips and beautiful smiling faces, they cannot be stimulated to passion by their mirth and beautiful charms. The ladies in Vaikuntha planets are as beautiful as Goddess of Fortune herself. And it is described, even when such beauty is there of females, the males don't get attracted to females there. Because they are completely attracted towards Krishna. The only attraction that they have is attraction to Krishna. Isn't that wonderful? Therefore, when that is the case, then where is the question of sex in spiritual world? If this is the case with devotees of the Lord, then where is the question of Lord Krishna being accused of doing something like what people do in this material world? As simple as that. Therefore, when we go deep in Shastra and understand the various intricacies, naturally we understand the purity of the people in spiritual world and of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then the word Pavitra, that is all pure personality, the Supreme Lord, makes a lot of sense because now you understand Shastra very clearly. So in this way, again and again in this world, why restrictions are put on sense gratification? Why Shastras talk about it again and again? Why devotees are expected to give up the desire for sex with time? For one reason. And this is only for them who want to attain Krishna in one lifetime. The one who wants to do in installment, you can reduce your sense gratification tendency in installment. But in this life, it has to be done very quickly. And that can be done only through intense practice of devotional service. Thank you very much. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai.